Before this story begins, take a second. If you believe that miracles sometimes come from the most unexpected hands, if you believe kindness can change a destiny, then stay with us until the very end, and if stories like this touch your heart, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel because stories like these deserve to be shared. No one in the delivery room noticed the silence at first. The machines beeped, doctors spoke calmly, nurses moved with routine precision, and outside the glass walls of the private hospital suite the city glowed with wealth and power, an empire built by one man, Victor Harrington, a billionaire, a visionary, a man who could bend markets with a phone call. But when his son was placed in his arms, something felt wrong. The baby didn't flinch at sound, didn't react to the sharp clap of hands, didn't cry when metal instruments clattered nearby. The doctors exchanged glances, and in that moment Victor Harrington learned a truth that no amount of money could erase. His son, Julian Harrington, was born deaf. Victor stood motionless as the diagnosis was explained, words like congenital, permanent, and lifelong floating around him but never landing. He had conquered boardrooms, lawsuits, and hostile takeovers, but this was an enemy he could not intimidate. When Julian's mother passed away from complications just days later, the silence in the mansion became unbearable. The Harrington estate was massive, marble floors, towering windows, priceless art, but it felt hollow. Julian grew up surrounded by luxury yet wrapped in isolation. Specialists came and went, the best schools tried and failed, tutors were hired and dismissed. Victor loved his son fiercely but didn't know how to reach him. Julian lived in a world without sound and slowly in a world without connection. By the time Julian turned 10, the staff had learned to keep their distance. He was known as the quiet boy with sad eyes who stared out windows longer than he spoke in signs. Most people treated him gently, carefully, like something fragile, except one person. Her name was Elena. She was the new maid, hired quietly, barely noticed, middle-aged, soft-spoken, with worn hands and eyes that carried stories no one had asked to hear. She cleaned floors, folded clothes, and moved through the mansion like a shadow, but Elena noticed Julian. She noticed how he watched people's mouths, how his fingers traced patterns on tables, how he flinched not at sound but at anger. One afternoon she found him sitting alone in the music room. The room hadn't been used in years, a grand piano sat untouched, polished but lifeless. Victor had closed it off after Julian's diagnosis. Music had become a painful reminder of what his son would never hear. Julian sat on the floor running his fingers along the piano's wooden body, feeling the vibration as Elena dusted nearby. She paused, then slowly she did something no one expected. She knelt down. Julian looked up startled. Elena didn't speak. Instead she gently placed Julian's hand on the piano, then placed her own hand over his and pressed a single key. The vibration traveled through the wood, through Julian's fingers, into his chest. His eyes widened. Elena smiled. That day something changed. From then on Elena found small ways to reach him. She taught him how vibrations worked, how rhythm could be felt not heard. She used sign language she had learned years ago for her own sister, something she had never mentioned to anyone at the mansion. Julian began to smile. Victor noticed. At first he was suspicious, then curious, then one night he stood quietly outside the music room and watched his son laugh for the first time since infancy. Anger flared not at Elena but at himself. He had spent millions on experts but never once tried to understand his son's world. Then came the night that changed everything. Julian was 12 when Victor found Elena in the music room after hours. In her hands was a small worn object wrapped in cloth. Victor demanded to know what she was doing. Elena hesitated, then gently unwrapped it. Inside was an old hearing device, custom-made, modified, nothing like the modern ones Victor had rejected years ago. Elena signed slowly, carefully, her hands trembling. She explained that her father had once worked in experimental sound technology, that this device didn't amplify sound the way others did, it translated vibration differently, that she had been adjusting it quietly, patiently testing it on herself. Victor was furious, then desperate, then silent. They fitted the device on Julian. Nothing happened. Victor's shoulders slumped. Then Julian's eyes filled with tears. He pressed his hands to the piano and froze. For the first time in his life Julian didn't just feel vibration, he perceived it, a distorted fragile bridge between silence and sound, but a bridge nonetheless. Julian looked up at his father and whispered, not perfectly, not clearly, but unmistakably, "Dad." Victor Harrington fell to his knees. The device didn't cure Julian. Life was still full of challenges, therapy, frustration, setbacks, but something fundamental had shifted, not just Julian's hearing. Victor changed too. He funded inclusive education programs, reopened the music room, promoted Elena not as a maid but as family. Years later Julian stood on a stage delivering a speech using both voice and sign language. The audience was silent not because they had to be but because they wanted to be. He spoke about difference, about listening with more than ears, about the people the world overlooks. And in the front row sat a billionaire and a former maid, both with tears in their eyes, because sometimes the miracle isn't money, sometimes it's someone who sees what everyone else ignored. If this story moved you, inspired you, or reminded you that kindness can change a life, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. More stories like this are coming, and remember, the quietest people often carry the loudest miracles.